Hi, Alexia. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julia. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, excited for our chat today. I think it's going to be a topic that a lot of our listeners will resonate with as far as, kind of comparing the conventional medical system to what we do as IHPs, but you have a pretty unique background and experience with it. So I'm looking forward to you sharing your story. What I would love to do to start is, can you share with our listeners a little bit about what you're currently doing with your IHP certification? And then we'll talk about what you were doing before that.
Yeah. So I completed IHP 2 and basically started my practice, and that's what I do today. So I see clients, mostly women, working a lot with hormones, gut health, energy, sleep, and weight issues, really looking at a lot of the functional labs and getting to the root cause of whatever symptoms they've been having, usually because they've had these symptoms for years. Been unexplained. They've been dismissed in the traditional medical system. So they come to me and we investigate those and help them heal more naturally, with diet, lifestyle, supplements, all things like that.
Great. And what were you doing before you discovered IHP, and kind of how did that path lead you to where you are now?
So I'm an MD by training. I went to Tufts University School of Medicine. And while I was there, and throughout much of my education, I realized that I didn't love the traditional medical system. I didn't like how the appointments were rushed, how we really learned a model of symptoms, diagnosis, medication, and repeat. And people were, bounced around between specialties. They really weren't healing and really getting healthier. They were, if anything, getting sicker. And I felt like all I wanted to talk about was nutrition, sleep, exercise, stress management, everything we always say. And so towards the end of my medical school training, and even after, is when I completed my IHP level 1 and 2 certifications, so that I could pivot my career and become more of a health coach, IHP, combine that with my MD background so that I could really help people heal in the way I found for myself, and have really seen success with that with all my clients so far.
Yes. Yeah. So compelling that you went through that extensive medical training, and your passion was probably to help people be well. Like, you probably had a lot of that passion behind it, and maybe realized that, as you said, that only certain steps were going to get you there. And what you were seeing for change wasn't at the inspirational level that you wanted to see. So I think, we've had lots of conventionally trained people on this podcast, pharmacists, but I've never talked to somebody who very early on in their medical career, realized that there was just like this huge gap. Did you also have a personal history with like your own health things that kind of led you to, or were you just always interested in health, wellness, and some of the foundations of what we talk about in IHP?
Yeah, I had several years of symptoms from childhood that were not really explained by conventional medicine. I went to so many specialists, was put on so many medications as a young kid for various symptoms. And I finally went to a functional and integrative physician. And he was the one who really inspired me to go into that field for myself, for my career. Because we finally found some underlying food intolerances, gut dysbiosis, nervous system dysregulation. And that's where I really healed, was working with that versus, working with the conventional doctors who just put me on medications and couldn't really figure out what was actually going on. My parents didn't want me to be on a Band-Aid for the rest of my life, starting at age 9. So that's where I decided to go into that field. And I thought conventional medical school would get me there. And it did to an extent, but I really didn't want to continue the training in that trajectory, and felt that there was so much more that I could do with learning Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, integrative medicine in general, functional medicine, and the lab testing, and that I wasn't going to get in the conventional training sense. So that's where I wanted to pivot. And I found so much success within my own health. My family's health was really changed by that as well. So, once I realized in conventional medical school that was not where I was going to end up with my career, that's really what also led me to pivot again.
Yes. Yeah. And I think so many of the listeners, other IHPs, they've had their stories of like the struggles within the conventional medicine system, and then they found answers in holistic medicine, right? And I think, again, where your story is unique and compelling is you were also being taught that and being able to, kind of see it so clearly and pivot is, yeah, I think truly remarkable, especially, early on. I would love to kind of get a little bit of your take on, do you ever blend the two? Do you find that there's like a clear direction that you go as far as like, do you use your all your MD training, maybe like, obviously when it comes to medications or someone's on lists of things, do you blend the two? Do you kind of have a real hard focus on one or the other?
So in my own practice, I function more as similar to an IHP would, where I'm doing more lifestyle based focused work, really looking at the nutrition, supplements, all lifestyle habits rather than diagnosing and prescribing medications. However, if they're on medications, I have a lot of knowledge about them. We talk about those. We make educated decisions based on what their background is, their desires. And most of my clients come to me because they don't really want to be on medications and they want to go this other route. The only caveat to that is typically they're on some and, but that's not the ones that want to expand their medication profile. So I don't deal with that necessarily. I will say I want to also make a note of the traditional medical and conventional medical system is great for acute things, emergencies, surgeries, all things like that. But most of the people coming to me are coming for a chronic condition or chronic symptoms. So that's why I don't see the need for myself to be working with them on a medication-based focus. We're really looking at what's underlying 90% of chronic conditions, lifestyle. So that's where we are there to rebalance the body with them naturally, really integrate this into their life forever rather than putting them on medications that maybe would be better for acute conditions or something like that. But really working on the foundations is what is the foundation of my practice.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And we've said this all the time on this podcast. Nothing's going to take the place of emergency acute care, right? Than a hospital and conventional. But most people are not, unless it's an acute issue, like you just said, they're dealing with like all the symptoms that come in the way of living like someone's best life. It's, the low mood or sluggish energy or poor sleep or hormone imbalances. And there's not many things in that realm that are going to tip the scales or improve symptoms like we know lifestyle will. And I love that even, you kind of talk about lifestyle because even supplements, they can act as like a green band-aid, like in a way that people who want to just use supplements and don't want to change their diet and don't want to exercise and they don't want to do a lot of the lifestyle modifications, supplements can kind of act in the same way as medication where, okay, I can give you these supplements, but if you don't want to change all of that, these really aren't going to do a whole heck of a lot to address the root cause. Do you find that there's some clients that you see that, you're needing to kind of talk in that manner?
100%. I have actually several people who will come to me and say, can you give me something to just fix this for now, like a supplement? And I'll say, yeah, that'll get you part of the way there. But again, if you're not addressing your sleep, you're not changing your diet, you're not thinking about all the other factors, your job, your connections with people, the way that you're handling your stress, this one supplement isn't going to fix everything forever. It's not really going to move the needle as much as it would had you worked on all the other lifestyle factors. And it's true. I think people see MD and they go, oh, you're going to just fix me with a pill here. So similar things, but an actual pill. And that's not really the case with how it should be. And I try to explain that to people. And I think that once they understand that and they incorporate all the small changes into their life, then they realize that the lifestyle foundation is really what was important more than the supplement. And of course, supplements are great. And for certain people, certain things are better than others. But that's not the overarching thing to add in.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, again, where you can kind of bring a unique perspective is you're able to like let them know, like, listen, I believe in this so wholeheartedly that like there's medication, there's supplements, there's like all the things that you can add, but it's truly like empowering them to make change in their life that you were so passionate about. And you've seen that all those other things only give temporary relief of symptoms. And if we really want to correct underlying root causes and change a whole host of chronic based symptoms, we have to address the chronic underlying habits that have maybe gotten them there. And I think it's really probably inspirational to clients when you're able to say like, look, this is where I came from. And I have seen it all. I've seen what medication can do. I've seen what supplements can do. And it's still so much about people's day-to-day choices that drive their overall experience with symptoms.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the message I try to give to people, is that it's basically 90% of what you do throughout the day that really makes a difference in your health. It's not that 10% that could be the supplement, that could be the additional therapies that you add on, even the really great holistic ones, like IVs or peptides or red light therapy, saunas. I mean, all good things in certain places and times, but that's not going to be the one thing that fixes everything. It's really all the other day-to-day habits that make a difference. And so similar with supplements, medications, all of the above.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I think like the part of the teaching of the de-stress protocol that, Dr. Cabral uses, it's like such a huge, I have, clients that, or other IHPs that think all the time, like, unless I know all the things, how can I possibly help someone? But like, even just using the de-stress protocol is so vital to getting a client, just empowering them to make different choices. I think because like we've lived in a world where, medication and even supplements are like always part of the equation, like adding something in or trying like every pill for every ill, it really disempowers people from believing that their own choices, their own habits, their own even mindset, right, can play a huge role in how they're experiencing things. And what I love to say is like partly an empowerment coach. I want to empower you to like not even need my expertise because you're making all of the right choices on your own, that a majority of the symptoms resolve. Now, like if someone's under stress, like do they need magnesium and B vitamins to help with like sleep and energy? Of course. But the truth is those things won't work as well if lifestyle factors aren't part of the equation.
Exactly. And that's the thing with the depleted soil, the depleted nutrients in the food system. That's where sometimes those supplements and the vitamins are necessary so that we can augment that. But again, that's not going to be a problem. I mean, that's not a fault of the individual. That's unfortunately a systemic issue that we in this modern day have to navigate.
Absolutely. Yeah. I tell clients this all the time because they're like, well, I really would like to get all my nutrients through food.
Yeah.
And that was once possible. Unfortunately, like animal protein is even less nutrient dense than it used to be before because the plants and what animals are feeding on is less nutrient dense, and the soil that the food's grown in. And so yes, while that is all kind of well and good, I mean, it would have to be a full-time job to be getting the nutrients that you need only from food. And the other piece of it too is clients really underestimate, because of how common chronic stress is. I think clients underestimate how our bodies are under a wildly unbiologically normal amount of stress than we were ever intended to be under, whether it's blue light, whether it's the amount of information at our fingertips, whether it's our lifestyle, running from one thing to the other, being able to compare ourselves to any person on our phone. We're under way more stress than we were ever intentionally designed. And I believe this is why women are more chronically ill than men, because our hormonal system is much more fragile to stress. And our stress, I think, as women has dramatically increased. And so now we need more to buffer that stress. We're depleted more just from the stress alone. And now we need certain nutrients to buffer that stress that are more depleted in our food sources. So now it's like we're at a never ending, a negative feedback loop where we're not getting enough and we need more than we've ever needed. And so, yeah, when clients are like, oh, but can I just do this through food? It's hard to fill the gaps, I think, with food. And the functional medicine lab testing is great at illuminating that and showing the client, like, here's all of the places that you're kind of falling short.
Definitely. And you brought up a good point about how we're just not living in an optimal circadian type rhythm. I mean, the amount of times that I hear clients are working on their phones in bed, right before bed, or watching the news in bed, right before bed, the lights are on at midnight. They're not waking up and getting outside or getting any sunlight. And so we're just so dysregulated, and people think, well, this is normal, so there must be something wrong with me because I wake up at 3 a.m. Well, maybe it's because we're not meant to be on our phones, reading the news, doing stressful work with the lights on. when we should be sleeping, or at least when there should be a campfire light type of, on while we're reading in bed or something a little less stimulating. And so that's such a big shift for a lot of people. And it's hard because that's not what you're used to in your day-to-day life for so many years. But once people really do that, it's a dramatic change in their sleep, their energy, all their other symptoms. And it's something so small. And they think, well, I should be taking a sleeping pill or something like that. But really, it was just a small lifestyle switch.
Yes. Yep. And oftentimes they're the hardest thing, like our habits are the hardest things to shift. But it is so incredibly important because the truth is like even that sleep supplement, I see it all the time. If a client is using blue light, they're having stressful conversations at night, they're not winding down appropriately, even a sleep supplement, and it definitely happens with like pharmaceutical sleep aids. Yes, it like puts you to sleep, but you don't wake up feeling rested because it's not reparative deep sleep that your body's actually getting, because again, it got all these other signals that it wasn't safe to fall asleep, stay asleep, melatonin didn't rise, cortisol didn't come down. And so even though you get the thing to be different, you fall asleep better or you stay asleep, you're still not getting the deep result that the lifestyle switch would give you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing with many facets. Like it's to think about stress management too. I think, if I just take some stress relieving supplement, great, I'll be fine. But then they're not addressing the things in their life that are causing stress. And of course, stress is inevitable. We're not going to avoid it all. And you have to learn how to adapt to it. But sometimes the stress supplements, if they're just becoming reliant on them, they're not developing those habits, like you said. And those sometimes are the hardest ones to add too. Habits aren't that easy to maintain. And that's also why I don't like to just give people a plan and say, here you go, and send them on their way. And it's really a lot of that is coaching and being accountable and, seeing them periodically to motivate them to continue with those changes, because I've seen so much success with people making the changes, but we want to make sure that they're actually maintaining them. And it's not something that will just happen overnight and then everything will be fixed. It really is a lifelong lifestyle adjustment, but that is going back to our more primitive roots, like we were talking about, and really living in alignment with how we were supposed to be living within the confines of our modern society. Like you're not going to quit your job, but there's ways to make yourself feel a little better about it, or, have better habits around it, or boundaries, different things that will make our modern life a little more optimal for the way that we should be. Yeah, less unhealthy.
Yep. Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because I was just actually talking about this in a mentorship group of, coaches that are worried about charging X amount of dollars because it sounds a lot for like a certain amount of time. But we are giving these clients so much more than just time and knowledge. It's accountability, it's coaching, it's kind of seeing them through the process, because we know what it takes to enact change and then continue with those habits. Because a lot of people, they can start to feel a little bit better and think like, ooh, I'm better. And then they go back to doing like all the unhealthy things. And so it really is a matter of making sure that we are, again, coaching. And that's probably one of the biggest differences with the medical system, is like you probably did just kind of see patients and they were on their way with their new medication. And there's very little accountability or follow-up of like how you're feeling. And you probably only ever saw the people that were coming back feeling worse and not better too.
Exactly. Yeah. There's not really space within the medical system to have that consistent accountability. I mean, you could with certain other providers, but you're not going to have that continuity necessarily with the one person. And like you said, probably only if you're not feeling better will you come back, because why would you come back if you're feeling fine? But that's why people then keep coming back and going to different specialties and coming up with new issues, because they're not having the space to make the changes and really keep meeting with someone. And that's where, with coaching in this business, I have allowed people to continue meeting with me in a different way than the traditional system. And that's where they really see the changes, because it's not just the plan and now you're on your own trying to figure it out. You really have someone helping you every step of the way. And that's where the changes are more sustainable. The people who leave after, I feel great, that's fine, but it's not the ones that are as successful, I've noticed, in the long term.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I would love to know how you use functional medicine lab testing, because I'm sure you've seen lots of quantitative ways to test for things, right? Like obviously blood work and whatnot. Are you a big fan of functional medicine lab testing, and how do you incorporate it into your practice?
I am. So I love to do my main tests I do are the hormone panels and the organic acids tests. Because a lot of people come to me with hormone issues, gut issues, sleep, energy, things like that. Mostly women, so that's why I do a lot of with hormones, and they're just feeling exhausted, depleted, burnt out, and I feel like we get a lot of answers with that. And that's also where people really see the tangible results when we make those adjustments.
Mhm.
A lot of times people will come to me with other lab tests. We'll incorporate those as well within the context of what we're talking about. But I do find that most of the time they're normal. Like they'll send me a CBC and it's normal, obviously. That's not really giving me answers. The functional medicine lab testing is. That's where we see the imbalances, the deficiencies, the toxicities, all of that to really rebalance the body. And I incorporate that. I don't have everyone do every test. It's really individualized based on their symptoms, what they feel like is right for them. And I really make it an individualized approach for whatever their needs are and their goals are. So I would say the organic acids test and the hormones being my main ones, but I do incorporate a lot of other ones like the hair tissue mineral analysis, food sensitivity, omega-3 inflammation tests, stool test, mold testing. Just really depends on the person, and really individualizing their care for probably the first time for them.
Yes, absolutely. And again, looking at like those root causes, I always tell clients who come and they're frustrated. They're like, "Oh, I ran all these blood work markers and my doctor told me everything's fine and I don't feel fine." And it's not it's the system. It's not the doctor. The testing system, the way that it was taught of like, okay, run these markers. Those are tests that are looking for like real dis-ease and not trends of why the body may be getting unhealthier over time. And so the doctor's working with what the system has kind of put into play as being the main things that are tested for, right? But when you're able to incorporate better testing, you get better answers. And so that really, I mean, I think that's the biggest difference between the functional and conventional blood work. A lot of that like doesn't tell you why someone may be feeling chronically unwell. It just tells you if they're already at a diseased state.
Exactly. And a lot of times clients will advocate to their doctors and say, "Hey, can you do these tests for me or something?" And a lot of times they're met with a no. And so then we work together and look at whatever's been going on within the confines of different testing and the context of their lifestyle. And that's where they're able to get answers. But they have been going for years without getting any answers anyways, because their doctor will say, "Well, that's not going to be covered," or "That's unnecessary," or "What are you going to do with that information?" Because they're not really trained to think about the body in a different lens. And the doctor also doesn't have time. So if you order that test, they have to have time to explain it to them, and they don't really have that time. That's not their fault. That's the system's issue. But that's why clients are leaving their doctors very frustrated. And the lab testing really gives them that validation. And that's why I really like to use it. And we could even work without lab testing. So some people don't want to do it. And that works well too, because we're doing a lot of the lifestyle based work. But the lab tests, again, really show them, yes, there is something underlying. That's why you're feeling this way versus having no answers.
Yes. Yeah. I love the fact that you brought up that it's validating, because so many, the like energetic emotional frustration is, I don't feel good and you're telling me that I'm fine and I don't feel fine. And so I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've reviewed labs with women who just like break down in tears, and they're like, I knew something was wrong, because they finally now see quantitative data that something isn't quite right, and they finally have something to work on. And it can be incredibly validating to finally like know, okay, like it's not all in my head, or I'm not crazy like the doctor told me I was, or I don't just need to see a therapist, because that's like another common thing, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I think the validation that those tests bring is so valuable.
Definitely. Yeah, they're always told it's in your head, it's stress, it's just part of aging or being a woman for a lot of women. And they're not feeling validated because they're just being told, well, this is normal for everyone. And it's not normal. It's common to feel a lot of this way for people, whether it's exhausted or bloated or whatever it may be. But that's not normal. We are not supposed to feel this way, especially as we get older. Just because you're in menopause doesn't mean that your body's supposed to break down. So that's where working together really allows them to realize that they should take care of themselves, that it is time for them to do so, and that what they've been feeling is valid.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. If people are listening and they want to find out or connect with you more, where are all the places that you show up, places like social media or a website?
I'm on LinkedIn personally as my name, Alexia Soteropoulos, MD. And then on Instagram, I have my business name, Anasoma Integrative Wellness, and also on Facebook there as well, but mostly on Instagram for my business and LinkedIn personally.
Great. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. Really enjoyed getting to know you and sharing all your wisdom with our listeners. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Alexia.